the Rockets were due for a game like this. And since we are in the honeymoon phase, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, but I'm going to let it roll off my shoulders and save it to bring it up 2 to 3 months later, like a proper woman should.
Yeah, look, you got to give them some. You got to give wins to people. Sometimes you play them. You can't sweep the Grizzlies. That's just mean, Paul. You got to give them one game.
That's just Bears mentality.
You got to give them. You got to give them one
No,
game. Let the Grizzlies get a win this year.
No,
it was fun. It was a really entertaining game.
It was entertaining.
It was a very entertaining game from start to finish. You are going to lose games like this. Coming off the Hawks game, in which you gave up a lead, and you held on. You're not going to hold on to a lead every single time. And the final play, obviously, is the one that's getting the most conversation right now because of who took the final shot. Because it's Fred VanVleet. I think people clearly don't like that. I'm not going to be up in arms about it because the play wasn't for him. So, I can't be up in arms about something that wasn't designed for him.
The play was for Amin Thompson per Ime Udoka after the game. Was that the best idea given that Thompson was clearly dealing with some sort of back injury for the last 3 minutes and is limited as a shooter? Maybe not. I'm of the belief that you draw plays to get people open, and it doesn't matter who takes the last shot. What the hell is this? The Wild West? Do we need to play Ennio Morricone spaghetti western music in the background? And you've got either Jalen Green or Fred VanVleet with one of those old-fashioned cigarillos in their mouth, dribbling the ball down until the shot clock's about to expire. Then they go up for a shot, only to, for the most part, when last possessions end up like this, miss! Do you not remember James Harden? How many times did he actually make it at the very end? How many times do any star players make it at the very end? I hate this. It's all part of this me generation. We got to have the star player take the last shot. Shut up. That's so dumb. They're all in the NBA. The professionals work to get the open shot. It's a team sport. I saw that last night after I was done the live stream, and I just started thinking to myself, God, NBA fans, do not get it. You just don't get it. I do. Born in Boston, 18 titles. Was I alive for many of them? Shut up. Not the point. The open guy gets the final shot. And that play, not a good play. So it had to go to Fred VanVleet, who did have an open look. It just wasn't the best look to take. But all this crying about, Jalen Green should take the last shot. He was 1 for 6 down the stretch. He was doing bad things down the stretch. Fred VanVleet was doing bad things down the stretch. They played very sloppy at the very end of the game. But this last shot debate, embrace debate. How about embrace my nuts? Shut up. Shut up.
They're all paid to be there. Fred VanVleet's the most expensive player on the roster. He makes $42 million a year. Like that's what he's here for. Veteran presence, closing presence. It makes sense for him to be the number 2 option. Now, yes, Jalen Green struggling towards the end. I get where Rockets fans are like, well, just Jalen Green should just be taking the shot. But that's not based on anything besides wanting Jalen Green to be something that he's not, which is a closer right now. I mean, he's
not a closer.
Amen Thompson is the closer. And
we saw him do it against the Celtics.
Exactly. And the play is designed for Amen Thompson. So clearly the coach is telling you that Jalen Green is not the guy that they want to have the ball in his hands when the shot clock's expiring at the end of a game. They want Amen Thompson to have it. And they doubled him, and he had to give it up. And, yeah, I guess you'd say semantics, that could have been Jalen Green in that position instead of Fred, but that's Fred's job. He's a starting point guard on this team. You're right. It's as long as Steven Adams and Jayshawn Tate don't take the last shot, and I know Adams wasn't out there, only Tate was, but as long as Steven Adams and someone of that caliber is not taking the final shot, you look at this Rockets roster, you can't constantly be talking about how deep it is, how good it is, all these young guys, all these guys who can be star players and good players and the core 7, but then at the end of the game, you're like, oh, I hate when any of them take a shot. No, like the best player or the open player takes a shot. Fred was open, he missed it.
He's in the NBA. All of these guys, for the most part, are capable of hitting it. If Tari Eason was open, I would have been cool with Tari Eason taking the shot, even if he's a 30% shooter. What's Amin Thompson career from outside? 20? The guy's open, take the shot. Because I think the open shot is the best way to win in that situation. Could it have been a better play? 100%. But yeah, there was this debate online. I'm just like, guys, not the time, not the place, They lost. They've been on the road for a while. Let's relax. But I just hate basketball culture with a passion. Like, this is coming from a guy who, when I play pickup basketball, if you play a lick of defense with anybody, like, I just think that basketball culture is generally soft and there's this me stuff in the back because you worship all the stars in this league. But guess what? It's a team game ultimately. And if you have a good team, which the Rockets are one of the best in the NBA this year, you work it to get the open shot. Fred VanVleet on that play gets the ball back. He did have an open look. And Fred VanVleet has said earlier this year, even if I go 0 for 20, I'm going to keep shooting. I have no problem with him shooting the ball in that situation. Would have been nicer to have some better shots before that and
Yes.
not that Jalen Green out of control possession before that. Because I think that's really where they lost the game. It's not about like who took the final shot.
No, because for me, the final shot, you can't be a hypocrite based on the result. You have to. It's almost like the Trevor Lawrence thing in a way, where like we're not going to complain about CJ Stroud if he gets hit in the way that Trevor Lawrence did. Would anyone be complaining today about Fred taking that shot if it goes in?
No.
No, exactly. So then, like, it's not a bad shot.
If he makes the shot, Rockets launch. Boom.
So then it's not a bad shot. It's not a bad play. It didn't go the way they wanted it to, and it's a regular season game. You're not going to win every single basketball game. Does it raise questions about like how you advance deeper into the playoffs with a Men Thompson who can't shoot threes as a closer? Yeah, I think that's a fair question to like where we're having the conversation yesterday about how far this team can go. I'm comfortable with saying that they could get to the Western Conference Finals, but I think one of the biggest questions I would have is that when you close, if they're going to double a men like this, is do you trust the guys around him to hit their open shots when it matters most? And I think often probably 50-50 in terms of like trust level, I would say, depending on who has the ball and how they've played that day. But it's a bigger question for me. It's more about like a men's getting the ball. It continues the fact of what you said, Paul, is that he is a star. He is the guy that even in a loss, he's the guy that Ime trusts the most. That to me says way more about last night's game than the actual results of it.
Now that is interesting. Maybe Udoka trusts the wrong person. And I suppose you could make that argument given the play, especially that considering Thompson had a moment down the stretch after that back injury where he also screwed up. Like there were a lot of mistakes down the stretch. They looked like they were going to pull away with this game in the third quarter. Did that against the Hawks, weren't able to close out. Learning experience for a young team. They've been on the road for a while. I think that's another part of this that has to be considered. So I'm not here to get mad at that game. I'm disappointed, but I mean, they've been playing so well of late. They were due for one of these last second games to go against them. And, it's crazy. I mean, down the stretch, you have that referee completely screwing up, thinking that the Grizzlies head coach had called a timeout while the Rockets were kind of lost in transition defense. Memphis had a breakaway layup, and that referee he ruled that the Memphis coach called the timeout. I saw that. I don't think I've ever seen
I
that.
was just thinking the same thing. I don't think I've ever seen that in anything.
I really wanted to. And I mean, I know this is like not rooting for sportsmanship, but just because of how funny it would have been so funny if that referee gave the Grizzlies head coach a technical foul for justifiably being pissed off at truly one of the worst calls ever. Like you go back and watch the replay, like he doesn't make any timeout motion.
He's telling them to run.
Right. And it's funny, like watching afterwards the replay, they zoom in and the referee's basically like telling him to watch it, buddy. And you're thinking to yourself, dude, this is one of the rare instances where you screwed up and you should be on your knees apologizing.
That's actually where like if the Rockets win last night's game because of that, I know the Rockets failed in their protest of the Spurs game, which the dunk went in and came out. I actually think the NBA would have to take a hard look at that if the Grizzlies filed a protest last night, if they would have lost, and be like, we might have to replay the final whatever seconds of the game
seconds. But the problem is they're not playing each other again the rest of the year because this is the fourth and final game. So they wouldn't have been able to do it
before the All-Star break or something.
Yeah,
or
like at right the All-Star break.
They're just like right after or something.
Yeah, but like I don't know how you wouldn't justify if the Rockets would have won last night not redoing that because it's wild.
The NBA always finds a way not to do a replay. Like the last one's still from like 15 years ago where they like miscounted timeouts or something.
Right.
Like it has to be like a mistake where it's like a misapplication of rules, not just like a refereeing mistake. And so that's how they like justify it. But yeah, that one I was already like as the timeout was being called and Taylor Jenkins was freaking out. I was like, are the Rockets gonna get away with one again? Like, are they gonna? Is this? And then when Jaren Jackson went to the line, I was like, is this gonna be like a Darius Garland like poop his pants
By the way,
situation?
Fred VanVleet just rubbed sweat
I saw
Yeah,
it.
on Jaren Jackson as he was
Savvy.
about to take those free throw attempts. It almost makes up for how many botched plays Van Vliet had down the stretch.
I think that was his biggest. That was the best chance he gave the Rockets of winning in the last 3 minutes. Was that right there?
Seriously.
We've seen shoe untying. We've seen like all sorts of. We've seen people walk over and talk to the free throw shooter. This is an innovation I can get behind by Fred VanVleet.
Just rubbing sweat.
$40 million well spent.